to you, another says I'm lucky to meet you. That's alternative. Hell, that's alternative to alternative. I feel stupid and contagious.
Hi everybody, and welcome to the second episode of Live from 88, Guitar Topics with Nathan. You're probably wondering, why Live from 88? So I'll tell you a little story today about the history and why I chose that name. I work in a building that is numbered 88, and about 3 years ago, when I first started this YouTube channel, I used to play in the lobby every single day, and my coworkers would walk by and they'd say, "Ethan, you should put your guitar case out for tips or something." And so it's just a little bit of a joke, really. So anyway, Live from 88, because that's where it all started. Today, in the second episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about a topic that was requested by one of my friends and subscribers to this channel. He wrote me and said, "Nathan, could you please tell us about growing up in the 90s in Seattle with all the great music that was here?" And so today I'm going to offer you a little bit of perspective, some of my favorite music was growing up in that era, and maybe a little bit of how it has influenced me as a guitarist today. Well, for starters, I was a child in the 1980s and a teenager in the 1990s. So as a child, I grew up listening to Van Halen and Def Leppard and some older stuff. I grew up listening to Led Zeppelin, and so those were some of my early influences on what a guitar should sound like. I loved like 80s hair metal. I was really into Metallica, and that's kind of where I got the idea. This is what a guitar should sound like. Later in this video, maybe I'll put a couple clips so that you can listen to some of the things that really influenced me. One of my favorite, most influential guitar riffs ever was Ain't Talking About Love by Van Halen. I just love that intro guitar riff. I remember I used to just turn it up and if you look up here, you can see a link to another video that I did about a year ago where I talked about my experience with the band Nirvana. They were another influential band in my youth, but I'll let you watch the video here to hear the full story, but I missed it a little bit. I was a little bit too young when Nirvana was really in their prime, but they're another fantastic band. Well, what else? Growing up in the 90s as a teenager, I became a teenager in the early 90s and was really a teenager in the mid to late 90s in the Seattle area. I became exposed to some bands that you've maybe never heard of, but I was just in, wow, that was so cool. It was so rebellious. It was just this edgy sound, and I just wanted to play that type of guitar music. And one of those bands that I was exposed to was called Butt Trumpet. You know, like a fart, Butt Trumpet. And, they're kind of a punk band, and they just had this edgy attitude about them, and I just loved the way they sounded. It's kind of funny because when I go back and listen to some of those bands now, I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know if I like that, but as a teenager, man, that was some cool music. Other bands that I really loved at the time, I was really into Guns N' Roses. I just loved the way Slash played that guitar. Yeah, it was a great time. I had a lot of really cool influences. Grunge music, Pearl Jam. Another one that you maybe don't know about too much, but I just remember really liking them, was another band called Candlebox. Um, those are some of the bands that I really enjoyed as a teenager and were really impactful. Um, but there's a myth that I have to dispel right here and right now. The myth is that if you lived in Seattle in the 1990s, grunge was everywhere, everywhere. But that's only true to an extent. There was kind of this kind of split in the kids that I went to school with. There was the sort of grunge rocker kids on one side, and on the other side there was the rappers. There was the kids that sagged their pants down to their knees, listened to Snoop Dogg, all that stuff. And so it was really quite it was quite a split, and then I felt like there was me in the middle. I was like, yeah, I'm kind of a rocker, like with all these alternative and grunge rock bands, Nirvana, Beck, Pearl Jam, all that, and on the other side I've got all these friends that are really into rap music, and then there was me right in the middle, and this is kind of how my musical influence got shaped, is I was into like all this hair metal, and so I don't know. It was a great time. There was a lot of great music. I don't know. I'll tell you one quick story about when I was just first learning to play the guitar. And you can take another look right here at the video right here. And this video was my first public performance. So you can kind of get a feel for what the rocker kids were dressing like in that time. I had the really long hair. I had a ponytail. I had the hair shaved up to here with a ponytail coming out the back. I had the ripped jeans. I had the Metallica t-shirt. It was pretty awesome. But as a young guitarist, I didn't really quite understand how you went about getting into a band. And so I remember this one day, as a new beginning rock guitarist kid, I was thinking, oh man, I just love Pearl Jam and I just love the way they play, and when I grow up I want to go join Pearl Jam. I just remember thinking that. I was thinking that's how you do it. You find a band that already exists and you go join that band because they're so cool. Unfortunately, that's not quite how it works in the real world, but that was kind of a dream that I had as a kid. I'm going to wrap up this episode number 2 today with a quick little story about probably one of the most influential guitarists on my life. And this was not until I was a bit older. This would have been about 1999, the first time I ever heard this guy play. And this guy, oh my goodness. I remember I was in my car, so I was driving at this age. I was probably about 16, and I was listening to a jazz radio station because there's a local jazz radio station that I used to listen to all the time because I had started getting into jazz music, and I heard this guy, Joe Pass, and I was just floored. I couldn't believe that somebody could play a guitar like that. I couldn't get out of my car until the song ended. I was just that impressed. And the first album I ever heard by Joe Pass was kind of an unusual tribute to another jazz musician named Charlie Parker, who's a saxophone player. But the album was I Remember Charlie Parker, and it was this solo nylon string jazz guitar performance, and I was just blown away when I heard that. And from that moment on, I was never the same guitarist. I definitely still play rock music. I still enjoy it, but I think that was the moment in my life when I started making a turn towards checking out classical guitar, and I started studying jazz guitar, and it was just a really impactful moment in my life. Well, that's enough for today. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video, and I look forward to telling you more stories in the future. If you have any topics that you want to hear about, let me know. Like I said, This one was music in the 90s and my experience with it, and it was a request. So let me know what you want to hear about. Thank you so much. Bye.
One baby to another says I'm lucky to meet you. That's alternative. Hell, that's alternative to alternative.